Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. I'm Satsunami and joining me to know more is my very good friend Adam. Adam, welcome to the fight.
Hello. Good to be back. And you stole my opening joke, so yeah, I would like to know more.
Yes, indeed. I am so sorry.
I prepared that earlier today as well. I was like, what? God, perfect. Bam.
Okay, let's start again then. Adam, would you like to know more about today's topic?
Yes, I would like to know. Click yes.
Oh, that is such a funny joke that I totally didn't steal. I apologise. Oh my god, where do we even begin with this film? Or rather, do you want to introduce the topic of the day to the audience?
We shall be talking about the 1997 cult classic film Starship Troopers, directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring. Let's see if I can get the top three people. So starring Casper Van Diem. Is that his name?
I think so. For the purposes of Chatsunami, yes. That's how you say it.
That's what he's called now. That's officially his name now. Denise Richards and Neil Patrick Harris.
Ooh. I was just trying to remember. I was like, is there anyone we missed? Nah, I'm sure it's fine. You know.
Well, those are the three main ones. Those are the three heroes of the Federation.
Oh, of course. Well, that's for next week.
That's true.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
time.
So, to give a bit of context, you and I, of course, went away and we binge-watched pretty much nearly all of the Starship Troopers films.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, yeah. Not gonna lie, I think by the time we got to the fourth film, we were a bit, like, you know how people, when they say they feel jet-lagged? It almost, it felt like Starship Trooper lagged, almost.
It did feel like a bit of a fever dream by the end.
Yeah, by the fourth one it was like, why are they all CGI? Why are they this? Why are they that? Yeah, I have to admit though, like after watching all 4 of them, would you say this one is probably the best?
Oh, hands. Like I don't think there's any contest. Like the first one is just, it is head and shoulders above the rest.
And knees and toes everywhere else. Hey, I was honestly like so excited because I did want to rewatch it for the longest time, and then I think you'd like mentioned, you know, like saying, oh, why don't we do it as a Chatsunami episode? And it was like, on the one hand, yes, 100%, because like this is for me personally, I don't know about you, but this is like such a guilty pleasure film for me. I remember watching this when I was younger and initially like not knowing what to think about it. But the more I watched it, the more I was like, okay, this is an awesome film.
Would you say it's one of your favourites?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, it's silly, it's over the top, it's goofy, and I think I had the advantage of not reading the book first. So, to give a bit of context, yeah, this is loosely, and I use that as loosely as possible, it's loosely based on a book by an author called Robert Heinlein. My turn to mess up the pronunciations today.
Yeah, I'm going to leave you that. And I was like, thank God I don't have to say that.
Yeah, and it's basically about, well, as the book suggests and the film suggests, it's about Starship Troopers. It's about like the military, or rather the Earth, becoming this like unified force, going out to conquer the stars, but both of them take a very drastic left and right turn from one another. Like, I feel as if they share the same names, like with the book and the characters and things, but that's kind of where it stops. So, like, before we get into the meat of, you know, the whole topic, yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about really just the film, the first film. And believe you me, we will get to the sequels, won't we?
No, we will.
I can see you cracking your knuckles there as if, oh, we'll get to it.
You didn't make me watch this for not to talk about it.
Yeah, that is true. So, see, when I say we watched them back to back, we did watch them back to back. We technically had a break between the first and the second one, and then the second and the third one, because we even had to get pizza and everything just to break it up, because it was like, if you did it back to back, like, straight, yeah, I think you would have lost your mind.
Yeah. It's just... I once watched the whole first season of that TV show 24 with a friend in a day, and I feel like the four Starship Troopers films took more to get more out of me than that first season of 24.
Really? Wow.
I'm just joking. They were both about the same.
Oh, well, that's a relief then. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. In like a couple of God, whenever I ask this, I always feel like either a university lecturer or like a teacher or something. I'm like, Adam, in several sentences or less, explain this film. Like, what's
Right.
this film about? Yeah.
On the surface level, this is a rather big, dumb action film about humans fighting space aliens. However, if you dig a bit, and this is open to a bit of interpretation, but if you dig into it, this is actually something of a satire of militarism, of like the effects of war, of like building, of having war as the central like theme of your like civilization. So yeah, it is like there are a lot of satirical elements to this below the surface, but I think if you do just choose to look at this as a surface level thing, this is just like this is like a big dumb space film, like to the T.
Yeah.
Everything's turned up to the max.
It is a goofy film, though. Like in the best way possible, I would say. It's a fun satire.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not often I would be like, oh, this is a fun satire of war, but it really is, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Like it is. Like you said, you can watch this. You can just watch it on the surface level and just have fun with it. Like you can just enjoy how like kind of mindless it appears, and like enjoy like it's very action heavy. It's not a boring film. It's not like a slow plodding film at all. So you can just kind of get swept up in that and really enjoy it. But as well, like as you say, like there is like a lot of satire there as well. But you say it's done in a kind of very like it's that Paul Verhoeven also did is known for doing like films like RoboCop and Total Recall as well. And it is that kind of he does have that kind of like tongue in cheek way of satirizing elements of society, which is very present in this.
I'm actually quite surprised that he took on a film like this, though, because as I said, this film is based on the book of the same name, yet there were like a lot of changes from the book. Like, as I was saying to you, probably not to your benefit, but I kept saying things like, well, in the book, because I've read like a bit of the book and there were some kind of minor major changes, which I'll probably bring up later, but I kept saying to you like, well, in the book, because there genuinely were like a lot of interesting changes, and then other ones where it was just like, right, okay, Paul Verhoeven's like doing his own thing, which is weird because even though it does its own thing and it's completely different, it was still entertaining. You get some, like, I mean, we're no strangers to like bad adaptations, are we? With, like,
God, no.
Yeah, Alone in the Dark, Super Mario Bros, Turkish Star Wars. How did that sneak into this review? I don't know. Anyway, like bad adaptations like that, but somehow, although he only takes like snippets of the book, he does like create this quite interesting, as you said, interesting satire. And I don't think it was well received though when it came out.
No, it wasn't. It was a commercial failure as well. I don't think it did that well.
Yeah.
Something that's really gained a very cult status, like down the line. I actually really wanted to ask you because obviously, like you said, you read some of the book, and like I've not read the book at all, but I was reading a few things about it today. And from your like what you've read of the book, just to put you on the spot here.
Oh God.
I'm into literary theory here.
Yeah.
From what you've read of the book, is the book satirical at all, or do you think like the book is like quite genuine, like in what it's kind of expressing?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a lot more blunt with the way it portrays itself. So there's a very famous scene in the film. Like, I remember when I was younger, this is a scene that they would put on all of the adverts where the three main characters go to enlist in the army, and one of them like is told that he's in the mobile infantry, which is just the army, and this guy shakes his hand, the recruiter shakes his hand and says, "Welcome. Joining the mobile infantry made me the man I am today." So he shakes his hand, he pushes his chair back, and you can see he's completely lost his legs. And that's played for laughs and everything. And they're like, oh, ha 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 ha, very funny. But in the book, I was like really taken aback by the way they portray it. So basically, when the three of them go in the film, you know, they just like get assigned to, you know, their roles. Like one of them goes to like the Secret Service, one of them goes to the Flight Academy, and the other one goes to the Army. But in the book, the female, the love interest rather, goes to join the fleet, whereas the other two are actually given quite a stern talking to. And it's really weird because the guy's like, listen, you know, don't join up if you're not serious about it. We get loads of people joining. You know, it gives it almost quite a weary, cynical take.
Yeah.
It's like it's not right away with a like, oh, join up, it's great. He does say things like, no matter what, so long as you're not hypnotised under the influence of anything, then we can find a job for you anywhere. And they are literally like, we can find a job for you, you know, peeling potatoes on a ship, or shovel duty, which does technically come back in the third film, but let's not go into that. You know, like things like that. There's even like a weird thing in the books. There's like psychic dogs, where it's like the psychic dog is like, or I don't know if they're psychic, but it's like a type of special dog that can talk to its owner, and when the owner dies, like it has to get put down and everything. It's like really weird sci-fi territory. Same with the power armor. Like they make a big thing about there being power armor in the books and things, but yeah, in the film it's just a set of armor, which obviously it must just be
expensive.
Yeah, like I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine why, because it's not like, is it Live Die Repeat? You know, the Tom Cruise film, where that's kind of Edge of Tomorrow. Sorry, well, yeah,
it got
yeah,
both things.
So confusing, that title, but anyway, you know how they've got like the power armor on, or the kind of exoskeleton. Like I can't imagine them back then having the budget or the, you know, kind of scope to have that. So I can see why they changed it. But yeah, sorry, like looping back. Sorry, that was a tangent. Looping back to your question, I would say they're a bit more earnest in their kind of commentary. Like, as I said, I haven't read the entire book, so there might be like a page at the end saying like, war is great. I don't think there is, but you know, I'm just covering myself in case I'm like, this book's great, and then there's that.
It's interesting because there does seem to be a bit of a debate about people who think he was writing a satirical novel, and other people who think this guy was genuinely like writing a book that was like very pro-militaristic and was arguing for like, you know, America should become a more militarized society. And there's a lot of stuff comparing, like, the bugs are compared to communist. This was written in, it's 59, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff saying the bugs are, like, supposed to be communists, you know, in the way they live in a collective and everything. And it's like this warning, you know, of, like, America's becoming soft, you know. So there's a debate over that. And as well, like, Paul Verhoeven read the book, but he apparently hated it. And he said it was too boring, he couldn't finish it. And apparently, like, when he directed this film, he directed the film specifically to be a satire of the themes of the book. So he read it and he viewed it as like a very pro-militarism piece of work. So it's just interesting. I just wanted to know what you kind of thought about it, because I've not read it and I don't know if I ever will. But I just thought like it'd be interesting to see what you kind of thought.
I mean, the only thing that I am a bit on the fence about is just the fact that it isn't really an adaptation of the book, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It's taken somebody else's work, and don't get me wrong, like, you can have your own interpretations of it and everything, that's fine, but it's the fact he's taken somebody else's work and then kind of twisting it into something completely different, which, as I said, I'm on the fence, because on the one hand, I do like this film. I think it's a lot of fun, it's got a lot of cool moments, the satire's great, but on the other hand, there's like a lot of kind of nuances and smaller aspects, and I'll get onto it later when we discuss like some of the key scenes, but there's a lot of like character interactions and things. Also as well, and I'm going to call out Paul Verhoeven, not that he's ever going to listen to this, but I'm going to call him out, purely for the fact that he keeps saying like, oh, it's supposed to be this parody and everything. What the hell does, or sorry, rather, not what the hell, where the hell does he think Buenos Aires is? Can I just say? Because, like, the only reason I bring this up is because this is where the book's set, or sorry, the film's set. It begins in Buenos Aires, where we've got Johnny Rico, or Juan Rico, as I think his full name is, played by Casper Van Dien. I'm leaving a pause here. Go Google him, look at his face. Because he is...
That chin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's got
lantern jaw.
I will admit he has got a mighty chin, definitely. And that's not an insult. That's more like me being jealous because I don't have a mighty chin like that.
Well envious of it.
Oh, it's like, you know the erasers you used to get in school? It's like his hasn't been used, and ours in comparison is like the worn down erasers.
Honestly, he should be cast as Superman just for that chin. It is a
Really? Yeah.
comic book, like as I say, lantern jaw is
Yeah.
amazing.
A Roman jaw.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, chiseled by, I don't know if Michelangelo was, no he wasn't, he was a painter, never mind. Anyway, that's,
No, he was a sculptor as well.
did he sculpt?
Yeah.
Huh, learn something new every day in
David
chess.
statue. Have you seen that one? There you go.
Oh,
Get
was
some
that
cult.
him?
Yeah, that's him.
Ah, so it was good. I always get them mixed up, you know that? Because
Oh,
it's
there's
like
a lot of them.
too much culture in Italy. So yeah, thank you for coming to our Satsunami podcast. No, I'm joking. Yeah, long story short from that rant, yeah, Buenos Aires is looking very much more like a stereotypical American suburb. And I think that was probably done intentionally to be like, oh, look, it's satire and things, but I don't know. Like, all I'm saying is when I watched this when I was younger, like, I had no idea where Buenos Aires was. And I was like, oh, that must be near America. And then the more, which it is technically, it's obviously South America. But the more and more I watched it, the more I was like, hold on a minute. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Huh. Okay. Okay, maybe a poor representation as a whole. That, and it gets, spoilers, it gets pretty squashed later by a meteor. So
Well, it's almost a parody of like something like Star Trek in a way, because it's almost like a parody of these like future societies where it's like, it's like world government, and everybody lives in harmony. Like, and I don't know if this was meant as like, I may be giving Paul Verhoeven and like the screenwriters and everything too much credit here, but it almost kind of, just because the rest of the film is so much of a parody, I almost wonder if that's like a parody of that like quote unquote utopian future. Where like, it's like one big, like, there's one like kind of conglomerate of human race.
yeah.
Again, I might be too much credit, but
Well, you do have a point. I mean, they do immediately split off people. Well, after the beginning where it shows you like a huge battle scene and the main character getting stabbed through the leg and everything by a big bug, it like cuts back to a couple of months before he joins up and we see Johnny's like life as just as a high schooler. And I say that very, very loosely because he's about what, late 20s, early 30s.
I think he was 29. I think
Yeah.
when he did this, so yeah.
Yeah, there's no...
Like, nearly Grease levels of high school students.
Remember you saying that. It's true, because it's really like, as we said, a loose adaptation of Buenos Aires and a loose adaptation of teenagers. Because you've got Denise... Who was the second person? Denise Richards, that was it. Sorry, I was blanking on her surname there. Like her as well, she still looks a bit older, and they all kind of look. I mean, the only one who doesn't is Neil Patrick Harris. He kind of looks like baby faced in a way, even when he gets his like pseudo fascist outfit later on.
There is nothing pseudo about that. I'm sorry, that is straight up an SS uniform.
Yeah,
needs to get taken off.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's like the big black trench coat later on and the boots, and you're like, yeah, it is. The subtlety of this film is non-existent. It is bombastic from start to finish, with a kind of lull at the beginning when we're looking back into the past about how they got into the military to begin with. And the reason is because this society puts like so much emphasis on the idea that you have to fight for your citizenship. It is like interesting, moral questions that they put forward. If you want to be a politician, if you want to run for government, if you want to do any of these things, you have to like first join the, I don't know what they call it overall, because you've got like the different branches of the military. You've got like the mobile infantry, which is the famous one. That's like just the regular army. You've got the fleet, which is the, well, as it suggests, it's like the pilots, the spaceships, that kind of thing. And then you've got the, I said pseudo, but yeah, the SS. You've got the Secret Service that's kicking about in the background and doing like all the research. I mean, that is quite interesting in a way to see like how they develop the society, if you know what, like in terms of world building. Like I do like that. I like the fact that they take time to kind of, establish that this is the way of life and this is the norm. This is how kids are kind of brought up. And even like Rico's parents, they're like, oh, your tutor or your teacher is filling your head with nonsense and all of this, because they have the luxury of just the fact that they're well off, so they don't have to become citizens, they don't have to sign up, but Rico still does it anyway because he's infatuated by Denise Richards. I mean, there is a joke somewhere that everyone was in the 90s, you know, but yeah. Especially for Rico, like, he does it so bad that he joins the bloody military to fight bugs. But before, like, we get on to, like, you know, him joining the military and everything, what were your thoughts of the intro?
I think it's a really clever intro because, as you say, like there's some great world building there, and it puts you right into like what you get. You can totally understand the mindset of what this world is now. This is a militaristic society to the T. You know, this is everything revolves around, like, if you want to say anything, you have to be part of the military, you know, and it does set up this world, and it's actually brilliant at doing it in this way. And what's really interesting as well, apparently that opening, so like, as you say, it starts with like a big kind of propaganda piece thing. Apparently a lot of that opening stuff is almost like shot for shot based off like one of like the most famous like Nazi propaganda film of the 30s called Triumph of the Will, which was this film, like I think it's like 34 or 35 or something like that. It's from like early into the Nazi regime, where it's like showing off like, you know, the devotion of the German nation to like Adolf Hitler, and it starts with these giant like military like parades, you know, of the German army and the SS, and apparently like it's a lot of like the early scenes of Starship Troopers are based off that. Wow. So already you're getting you already can see the kind of the satire here in a way of like, this society has just become so militaristic and like nobody questions it, and it's almost that way of like, it just seems to have like insidiously, like these values have just insidiously like wormed their way into it, and like to the fact that nobody questions it now, everybody's like, well, of course, yeah, like, you know, we're a militaristic society, and to become like a full member of society, you need to like serve, you know, and it's unquestioning and unflinching loyalty and doing your part for, you know, the Federation. So it's actually a really effective like opening, and it's something that I think actually on repeated viewings actually gets better. Yeah. So I don't think quite got. I mean, I'll save like my thoughts on the film overall and like my history with it till the end. But I don't think it's something I quite grasped at the time when I first watched it. It's only kind of having seen it again, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get what this film is, and I think it's a really, really clever opening.
I would agree with that. Like, when I first saw it, I was like so young and thinking, oh yay, pew pew, lasers, yay, giant bugs. Yeah. You know? Like, I didn't really grasp or kind of appreciate what Paul Verhoeven was kind of going for. And then you rewatch it, you're like, that's clever. Because it's going back to what you were saying about the kind of propaganda aspect. And this is like one of my favourite parts of the film. Not the propaganda itself, but more there's like kind of newsreels cut in between, which I absolutely adore. Like, these are kind of over the top propaganda things, and as you said, it kind of gives a reflection about what this kind of society's like, and I absolutely love it, because as you said, it's like kind of indoctrinating people to think, oh, this is just a stereotypical way of life. And they do this in quite a clever way, because there's a lot of parts where they use children in their advertisements. So at the very beginning, like before like we see the mobile infantry in action, there's like an advert for them, and they're all like, you've probably seen like a gif of it at some point, where it's like the woman looking in the camera going, I'm doing my part, and then the guy goes, I'm doing my part, and then it cuts to like this wee boy hiding behind like this column of soldiers, and he pops out and goes, I'm doing my part too, and they all laugh, you know, they laugh it off as if, look at that cute child, you know, dressed in fascist uniform. But then it continues. It doesn't like do it for everyone, but it continues. Like, you get adverts where the soldiers are literally giving them these huge assault rifles and handfuls of bullets. You know, they're like playing with it as if it's a toy, and they're just laughing it off as if it's just normal. When they go to invade Clondatu, which we'll get onto later, but is like the planet where the bugs come from, who are the main antagonists of this film. Well, debatably the main antagonists of this film. But you see like kids, you know, stamping, you know, these bugs on the ground, which I have verified were fake, because they did look very realistic, but it turns out they're...
I did wonder that.
Yeah, same. I thought, did they just dump cockroaches on the on the ground and just get them to stamp. But no, though, you're right. Yeah, they're fake. And there's like a huge thing of do your part, as if like even from a young age, they're getting kids to like, get into this mindset of this is what you should be doing. You should be, contributing to this society for the glory of the Federation and all of this. It's really clever in that way. I will admit, those kind of things are really interesting. There's some other ones that are a bit sillier, I'm going to be honest. But yeah, we'll get to that though. Yeah. But no, I do agree. I think it's really well done. Yeah, that really leads us into, I suppose, the first half of like the military section. Like we get to see Rico go through boot camp and see like how he interacts. And I have to admit, and again, I apologise, but it is different compared to the books.
Yeah.
Because I was saying this to you and you were like, oh god, sure. Nah, you weren't really. But it was like the way some of the characters were really portrayed. Like, for example, is it Sergeant Zim?
Yeah,
Or Lieutenant Zim? I can't remember.
I can't remember his rank now, but I've forgotten the word. But yeah, the trainer.
Yeah, the instructor. Yeah.
Instructor, that's...
Yeah, so, yeah, there's an instructor who is, I think, is it Clancy Brown? His name is.
Clancy Brown, yeah.
Yeah, the Kurgan himself. Yeah. And if you played Detroit Become Human, he's also in that as well. Fun fact of the day. If you'd like to subscribe to Clancy Brown Facts, you can do at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But yeah, jokes aside, he's quite a serious, but, well, not serious, he's more of a caricature of a drill sergeant, isn't he? Almost like Full Metal Jacket without the psycho slant on it.
Yeah.
Or rather the unhinged aspect of it, because it's like he's, yelling at them and, getting them to do 20 laps, beating them up, like doing all of this. In the book, he is portrayed in a very similar way of being like a hard ass, but they do kind of strip away, like, or rather they look into his vulnerabilities as a person rather than, just the caricature of a drill sergeant saying, like there's one scene where Jake Busey, who plays like one of the recruits, is like, he's bragging, he's saying, what's the point of carrying knives? We've just got a gun. The instructor asks him to put his hand on the wall, and he basically throws a knife through it, and he says, the enemy cannot press a button if you disable his hand. And then he yells to the medic, and that's like, again, medic! That's like, again, portrayed as like, oh, haha, this funny scene, but in the book, there's a scene that's kind of... It is really interesting. It's basically Rico gets put on, I think, admin duty or something, and he sees that one of his colleagues gets, like, led in by Zim, and they're having an argument, and he's basically saying to the main commander of the facility, like, oh, Zim's bullying me and everything, and the commander's trying to, like, brush him off and say, oh, bugger off. But yeah, eventually this recruit ends up admitting that he hit Zim, to which, the commander has to step in and be like, oh, we can't accept that. Thrice the lashings for you, and gets him up, and he gets his, he gets like whipped in front of I can't remember the official term for the flogging, that's it. Is it flogging?
Yeah.
Yeah,
flogging.
Yeah, he gets flogged in front of, like, the other recruits to show you don't do that. But later on, the main character overhears, like, a conversation between Zim and the commander. And basically, Zim admits that he let his guard down in front of, like, this particular recruit because he was starting to be quite, I suppose the right word's affectionate, it's like, or not affectionate, but, he was starting to think, oh, maybe he's not such a bad kid after all, and being a bit harsh on him. And then the guy turns around and, like, leathers him in the face. It's like, oh no, please stop. But the commander even says, oh, I'm just, like, I noticed you got punched and I didn't want to say anything. But the fact the guy opened his mouth and he admits to punching a superior officer, that then he has to step in. And to me anyway, like in those scenes in the book, it shows this kind of apathy of the Federation. It's like, oh, right, okay, we've all got our jobs. And for the mobile infantry, they're like, we'll do our duty. We take our jobs very seriously. But at the same time, there's that kind of apathy of they don't want to do the paperwork kind of thing. Whereas in the film, it's taken a lot more seriously. It's taken on as like a, again, like a kind of jokey character. And he's a lot of fun to watch. Like, I'm not dissing the actor or the character, but it's two completely different portrayals. But anyway, sorry. that was like a huge tangent. Like, what did you think of the boot camp scenes?
Yeah, I think I think they're good scenes, but I think they're good for a different reason. What I really like about the opening, as I said, is the kind of like undercurrent of the satire, with undercurrent as well. But it is quite
Yeah.
obvious. It's both subtle and really obvious at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it's a very interesting mix. I don't quite know how he got it, but it's both things at once.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find that so much with the boot camp scenes. Like maybe I missed it here, but for me, like I didn't. I mean, okay, fine. Like maybe the satire is like, oh, it's a hard military life, but I don't know if that's satire at this point. Like we kind of
Yeah.
know. We kind of know how hard like a military life is, and training and things and the sort of thing. It's very over the top, the training. I think it's that. It's funny that you said Full Metal Jacket, because I was like, it is like kind of like a souped up on steroids version of like Full Metal Jacket, but kind of without the sort of like, as you said, like psychological, like the horror of like the first half of Full Metal Jacket is. Like this one, it's just the kind of like ridiculous. Like Zim is like the instructor, like caricatured basically to the nines and everything, like up to the max, and everything in the training exercises and everything. And then like there's a scene at the end, towards the end of the training exercise, where one of Rico's soldiers, squad mates, is like accidentally killed during an exercise. And even that's like it's that traditional, it's that classic like Paul Verhoeven, like kind of violent. He did a lot with sort of models and everything like that, and so the guy's head like explodes basically and everything. It's just so over the top, and like it's good for that, like it's fun for that, but I don't, it doesn't have for me that kind of like the undercurrent of satire that some of the other parts of the film have. Even the flogging scene, which is like you're like, oh wow, that's like pretty intense, but at the same time the guy doing the flogging is like got this ginormous whip and he's doing like the flourishes and everything, it is, and like the thing that Rico is like strapped to is like looks like something out of like Star Trek or something, like it's just like so like over the top. So it's still good, like, and I still like the scenes, but it's like very different from the opening.
Oh no, absolutely. It is good, but it's just it's so, it almost feel, and this is going to sound terrible, but it's like if if Disney Channel made an adaptation of Full Metal Jacket, it's like so over the top, but it kind of lacks that bite, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, again, as you said, there's no parody in saying war is hell or training up is hell, because at that point in the film, there is no war. They're just, like, training to become part of the mobile infantry. And you even get a scene, though, where they all discuss their hopes and dreams about why they joined up, saying like, oh, I joined up because I want to be a politician, I joined up because I want to be this. Granted, it's in a very gratuitous way, and you gave me a fun fact about that scene, actually.
Oh, the shower scene.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So there's like a scene where basically it's a communal shower scene, but like one thing about the Federation military is that it's like, both men and women serve together alongside each other. And so this communal shower scene has both men and women, like, completely naked, just showering beside each other and everything. And apparently I read that the cast of the film were very reluctant to do that scene for obvious reasons. And I think, apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, I've not, like, fact-checked it, but apparently, like, they did it on the condition that Paul Verhoeven, the director, would, like, direct that scene naked himself, so, like... I mean, I can believe it. Again, I didn't fact check it, but I can believe it. Certainly, like it's an interesting scene, that one, because I don't know how to feel about it. Because on one hand, I'm like, was this just an excuse to put some nudity in this film? Like, part of me is like, and that's in fact that's another Verhoeven like trait. Like, there's usually nudity in most of his like films. I mean, this one isn't as bad as something like Showgirls, but like there still is usually like nudity to some extent in his films. So I can't tell whether it's just that. But on the other hand, like, I don't know, I didn't feel like it was a leery camera. Like, in a way that I feel a lot of these scenes get very kind of leery, especially around the female characters. It kind of just felt like it was being shot almost just like a almost documentary thing. It's just like, this is just happening. And, like, it's interesting to watch, like, the men and women kind of interact in the shower, because there didn't seem to be any kind of leering from the male characters or any kind of sexualization from either. The men and the women, they were just kind of, it was just like you imagine like soldiers just like, like shooting the breeze and like, like ribbing on each other and everything and just chatting away, just doing it. So I don't really know how to feel about like the scene, but like It is. I did laugh about that story, if it's true.
No, I do agree with you on that because, I mean, you and I have played games recently where gratuity is like a tagline in it.
Hmm.
Heavy rain. But yeah, heavy rain aside and my obsession with David Cage. You know, like that shower scene in this film, you're right, like it's not filmed in a way where it's like, oh look, you know, these women are, you know, lathering themselves up and look at these guys, you know, wolf whistling, you know, they're just cleaning
Yeah.
themselves. Like it's very just, I mean, don't get me wrong, it probably could have been cut. Like I don't think you would
Yeah.
have missed much if it was gone, but at the same time, as you said, it's not like over the top, it's not, you know, like there's nothing too bad with it in that sense. So I mean, I suppose I'm going to give him the plus for that. I mean, at least compared to the whipping scene.
Yeah. The whipping scene is
Yeah, the whipping scene's a
that's
thing.
something.
It's a thing. Signed by Adam and Satsunami. It's a thing. Yeah, that of course leads to the iconic war scene, if you can call it that, where the bugs, if you will believe it, if you'll believe the propaganda. In fact, sorry, before that, honestly, it's like a cavalcade of like misfortune for Rico, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, he's like top of his, you know, unit and everything, and the high, like the top brass or well, the top brass of the camp are kind of thinking, oh, he would make a great captain, and you know, they're fawning over him, oh, look at this guy. And then it ends up he gets I don't know what you call it, a video call or like a video message. Basically how they thought like communication would have gone in the future.
Yeah.
Where he gets like a video message from his quote unquote girlfriend saying, yeah, I like spaceships now. You're dumped. And he's like, oh, okay, that's bad. And, you know, Jake Busey becomes his friend. And to top it all off, he gets a guy in his squad killed. He gets flogged for it, you know. And I have to admit, something that I do find funny, and I did notice that a lot of other, like, reviewers have pointed this out. See the person who actually shot his squad mate by accident? She got off a lot lighter
Yep.
compared to Rico. So the reason like the guy gets shot is because, well, to be fair, like the reason they say in the film is because the guy's helmet won't fit. So Rico takes it off to try and readjust it, and one of the women in the squad, she ends up falling over and like firing her gun, which ends up like hitting him directly in the head. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think a helmet would have done much to stop that.
Yeah, it's probably unlikely.
Yeah, but that is one of my favourite scenes ever. It's, as you said, it's so over the top. As soon as he gets like shot in the head, it zooms into Casper Van Dien's face, and he's just like, "Medic!" He just screams. It's beautiful. Just great cinematography. But then, of course, you think, how could this day get any worse after he's been, you know, flogged, and this girl, she goes away, and yeah, it turns out that Buenos Aires has been hit by a meteor, or an asteroid rather, from the bug planet of Clondatu, which we come to know very well. And yeah, it's just like, this is where the propaganda and everything like gets hyped up to 10, isn't it? Where it's like,
Yeah.
you've got the shots of the destroyed city, and it's like millions dead, and you know, they zoom into the guy like amongst the wreckage going, the only good bug is a dead bug, which
Well, I think Paul Verhoeven, by the way, I think.
was it?
Is it Paul Verhoeven? Yeah, I think because apparently he's in this film, and I think
Ah.
that's him.
Wow. Oh god.
So there you go.
That would be cool if it was, but but yeah, but we can all tell what that line's referring to, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it eventually, of course, leads to, I suppose, I don't even know what you call them. The Federation, I suppose, as a whole.
Yeah.
The Federation declares war on these bugs, and oh boy, it does not go well. Granted, it's one of the coolest soundtracks I think I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, if you want to,
pretty epic.
if you want to look it up, it's called Clondatu Drop. Like, even if you watch the whole scene with that music, it is fantastic. From when the soldiers are like running into, you know, their shuttles and they're getting like shot down to the surface. It is great. It is absolutely a fantastic scene. And I would like, I would wholeheartedly be like, yeah, this is one of the top scenes ever. It's like Citizen
Yeah,
Kane, It's a Wonderful Life. Get that black and white shit out of here. Nah, I'm only half joking, but it is a good scene. Like, what did you think?
The scale of
Yeah.
it's the scale of it. I think what's so impressive is that you can see the number of extras they had in it. Like it's not you know, there's some people in the foreground and it's like they've CGI'd the rest of the army into it. Like it is all real, like actors like charging out, and everything, and it gives it this ginormous scale. And what I like about what also as well, can I just say one thing I love about on the after the asteroid scene is the freaking casualty counter that they like keeps like spiraling up. I just love that, as you said, like, millions dead as this thing just keeps like rising up, and like as well, I don't know if you wanted to save this point for later on or not, but like, do you want to talk about the conspiracy theory behind the asteroid? Do you want to save that for a later time?
No, we might as well go into it now.
Oh, fine. Well, I'll let you introduce the setup, and then we can maybe just...
So basically, what ends up happening, as we said, is the official story is that a asteroid was sent from is it their galaxy, or is it just the planet? Like, I don't know, obviously, it's supposed...
I think it's from the planet, but I might be wrong.
It's the only reason I say that is because at the beginning, they show you where Klandathu is in comparison to Earth, and it is a mighty distance away. It's like miles, like thousands of or millions of light years away. And like a lot of fans of the film have now come to the conclusion, or not the conclusion, but they've come up with a conspiracy theory that it was actually the Federation that launched the asteroid as like a means of, or rather a justification to invade Klandathu.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning...
for expansion.
Yeah, because at the beginning you see this... They've got, like, orbital defences, so they've got, like, huge cannons orbiting the Earth, and you see, like, a asteroid coming towards Earth, and they shoot it down, and that's what people were saying. They're like, there's no way that, this asteroid got past the cannons and the defences, so therefore, it's an inside job, that kind of thing. I don't know, I did feel as if that was kind of funny. I thought that was, like, a really interesting take. It's like, maybe Paul Verhoeven didn't like think about it, maybe he did, I don't know, but yeah, it was just like an interesting way of thinking of, again, like the idea that this is like a very militaristic society that is just focused on expansion. And for all you Trekkies out there, it's a lot like the Terran Federation. Don't worry, I'll get you to watch Star Trek eventually, Adam.
One day. Tell you will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically in Star Trek, there's like a mirror universe where it's like everything's kind of obviously mirror universe, but it's like everything's the opposite, where instead of like the United Federation, where it's like, a utopia and everyone's working together, it's like everyone's like cutthroat and they're like killing everyone, and that is basically what this Federation is like. And Starship Troopers is just like very, just not nice people. Not nice people at all.
I really want the meteorite, the asteroid thing to be true. That I really want that to be true, because I think it makes the most sense. As you say, I think it's really thematically appropriate for this society like that has built itself on war. It needs to to justify its existence. It needs to create like an external enemy as a reason to hold up its ideals and to support the military-industrial complex. And to justification for expansion, so it makes the most sense. And I kind of wish the film had lent more into. And again, this may be as you said, this might have been Paul Verhoeven's might have had this idea already, and perhaps he's just dropping enough small breadcrumbs there for people to pick up on. And I like that, but I kind of wish as well it had been pushed a bit more, because it makes the most sense, as you say. It makes the most sense, and I actually quite like the fact that you can look at this film from a different perspective as the bugs, rather than the bugs being this, aggressive, enemy that should be exterminated, as the film kind of portrays them. We could actually look at them from, a thing as they're actually just, minding their own business, and it's humans. Are the humans humans are the bad ones, and humans are the aggressors? So I kind of wish it had been pushed a little bit more, because I think it's such a... I love the idea, and I think it just makes the most sense for what the themes of this film.
But that's the thing, though. It's like the interesting thing about it is it differs from a lot of sci-fi films, because you know how in a lot of sci-fi films there's always the one spaceship that comes, or there's that first encounter, with the... I mean, don't get me wrong, they have talked about the bugs and having an encounter. In one of the newsreels, they actually talk about, Mormon settlers trying to settle on a bug planet. Spoilers, it does not go well for them. Again, as you said, it's us kind of, or not us, but, humanity, encroaching on their territory, as it were, where there really shouldn't be. And it's not like all of a sudden there's a huge spaceship above like Paris or London or, New York or anything like that. It's not the traditional sense of like an invasion, like, don't get me wrong, in later films they kind of play about with that for better or worse. But yeah, it's like more or less we are portrayed as the aggressors, and it's like all it took was like one meteor for everyone to get up in arms. And something I do like as well is, although they film like the initial invasion because they're like very overconfident, because that's what they say at the beginning during the invasion of Clondatu, which again is the home planet of the bugs. They say, oh, don't worry about like the bombardment from below, intelligence says it's just going to be like random and light, or the bugs are going to be pushovers. They're so confident that they actually send down a cameraman, and that is something that they have done in like real world wars, where you do get like someone on the front lines filming all of this going on. I think maybe not an apt comparison, but like if you take like the First World War for example, and you see like that's another war that they thought, oh, this is going to be a glorious battle, it's going to be a victory for the propaganda papers, and then 2 seconds later they're like, better not show this footage to anyone. The only difference being, of course, in World War One they could be a bit more selective about showing who saw this, whereas in this they basically live stream it, which I get annoyed at because I think sometimes my computer can't even handle live streaming and I'm on Earth. Whereas they're like weighing Clondatu and they're like, oh yeah, we're just transmitting this from over here. And it's like, that is bull, and it, Paul Verhoeven. Apparently in like over 100 years, that's the technology we're going to get. Interstellar Twitch streams.
The World War One comparison is really interesting, I think, and a really good one to make, because like if you look at like the tactics that the Federation are using, like they are very reminiscent of those like stereotype what we think of like First World War, where it's like it's just mass ranks of men just like charging forward, and it's that idea of like willpower will overcome like steel, and things like that. It's very reminiscent, especially of like the early first kind of phase of the First World War, where it's just like we'll send a mass of humanity forward, and that will overcome. They don't need like artillery support or anything else. And even like the way the Federation ships are flying, they're all like so packed tightly together.
Oh, I hated that. I kept saying that
just
to
going
you.
straight forward. So like the minute one gets hit, it like crashes into the next one. It's so, and that must have been a deliberate choice. I think that is a deliberate choice to kind of evoke images of that. And it's that idea, it's like the youth of humanity have been suckered into this this military industrial complex and like sent into the virtual meat grinder, not the virtual, the real meat grinder. To be like chewed up and spat out, basically, in the pursuit of the aims of like a shadowy kind of, nefarious elite. And so like that imagery there is like, it was just, you bring that World War One, I was like, because that's clearly, I think, what it's meant to like bring up, just in the way that they attack and everything. And there's like there's no real strategy or any kind of nuance. It's just like land this mass of men and women and just charge. With the disastrous results.
Do you know, the ironic thing is, I was just thinking back to the book there, and in the books, don't get me wrong, like I feel as if they made like the right choice of just having one villain in this, or when I say villain, enemy, let's say. Antagonist, yeah. Like, they only have one, which is the arachnids. In the books, like, I don't think, as far as I remember, I don't think I got to that bit with, like, the arachnids or anything, but they do mention them early on. But at the beginning, they show you another action scene, but instead they're fighting another alien race that they call skinnies, who are, like, 8 or 9 foot tall, like, aliens who have like guns of their own, and basically they use the kind of blitzkrieg tactics. So they go in, they blast a village, they blast everyone there, and then they pull out again and they get extracted. Yeah, it's kind of similar in this sense of, because this is the thing, we were laughing at the bit where like later on they invade another bug planet, because it's weird. I always thought when I was younger, I never really picked up that it wasn't Clondatu for the whole film, because they invade Clondatu, they get their arses kicked, and then it turns out they go to different planets to, like, try and get a foothold in this galaxy. And, like, there's a scene later on where you see, like, them bombarding the alien planet, or sorry, the bug planet with, like, fighter jets and things. And I thought that was quite funny, because I was like, why didn't they use them at the beginning?
Yeah.
And again, as you said, I think it's probably a deliberate choice there. It's them saying,
Yeah.
we have this technology, we do have the brains where we could have thought about this, we just didn't. Because again, it's like throwing all these men to the slaughter thinking, yeah, this is going to be an easy pushover. And you know, like, this is going to be an easy victory, it's going to be a great propaganda piece, we're going to slap this in children's lunchboxes, you know. And yeah, they absolutely reap what they sow in this instance.
Yeah.
And it is quite, if you look at it from the sense of, like, you know, a military casualty, it is quite horrific. You know, like millions of people dying and everything. You think, yeah, this is really grim. And I would say it gets better, but I think from that point on it gets just a bit sillier. Like, cooler, don't get me wrong, like really cool, but just very silly. Like, you get this love triangle subplot going on between Rico, Carmen, and a character we actually haven't touched on called Dizzy, who is played by, I think, Dina Myers. And she basically, at the beginning and throughout the film, she actually joins up as well. She's kind of like a parallel to Rico in the sense that she joins up for him just as much as he joined up for Carmen. And they get very close, they get into a relationship, and then, spoilers, she ends up dying. In the book, Dizzy is in the book. They die at the beginning. You might be wondering why I said they die in the beginning. Spoilers, Dizzy is a man in the books. There's no romance thing there. There's no, Paul was just like, yeah, we've got a person called Dizzy, let's just throw them in, change them into a woman, and yeah, let's have this weird subplot about them getting together and everything else. I don't know, it's a weird choice. I don't know if it's like a 90s sci-fi thing where they had to have like a love interest there, because I mean technically they've still got Carmen, but of course Carmen's still flying ships, so
yeah.
And let's be fair, she's like really non-existent like once Rico comes back into the picture, because the majority of the film does focus on Rico's journey as a kind of cocky, self-absorbent like teenager, quote-unquote teenager, to you know, his adulthood and, you know, joining the infantry and killing bugs, as it were. Yeah, she kind of comes up at the end and it's like, oh yeah, Carmen, I forgot about her. And if you think that's bad, Neil Patrick Harris, he's even worse. He pops up like after the first bit, he like only pops up 3 times later on in the film. All of those times in the Secret Service uniform, which we're so fond of.
He becomes Heil Patrick Harris.
Pretty much, like, you say it semi-jokingly, but genuinely, as we said, the subtlety...
Look at some pictures, it is a pure SS outfit.
Oh yeah, it's 100% an SS outfit. There's no denying it. I think they just changed the insignia, really.
Yeah, and that's literally it.
Yeah, pretty much. But of course, eventually Rico gets recruited into what becomes his teacher's platoon, or like his old high school teacher's platoon called, is it Radshak's Roughnecks or something?
I have his name up here and I'm like, God, Ajek or something like that.
Yeah, I always go to say it and I'm like, oh, but I'm so sorry. The Roughnecks, let's say, which actually did have a CGI spin-off, but let's not get into that. And yeah, you basically get to see like the life of the mobile infantry and like other planets and things, and them having the upper hand somewhat. And yeah, that's when it kind of gets a bit cartoony, when you've got them doing like flips on this this giant beetle that can shoot fire, which, don't get me wrong, is cool. It is really cool, like the designs and things. This is actually something I haven't brought up yet, but see the effects in this film. My God, how much do they hold up?
Yeah, they're really good actually. They really do hold up. There's none that I can think of. Mm-hmm. There might be a couple, but there's none that spring to my mind that they actually look really, really good. As you said, they do actually hold up.
No, they are. I mean, the bugs especially. Like, the bugs are absolutely fantastic. Like, some of them were actually physical models. And obviously for the bigger scenes, they had, like, CGI ones. But they actually made actual models for the bugs. And
that's awesome.
They're just so impressive. They are just utterly... You know, because, see, when you watch... Don't get me wrong, like, not all the CGI holds up, but see, considering this film was made in, like, the 90s, it is amazing how it looks better than some films that you see see
God.
nowadays where it's like the really awful CGI where you're like, yeah, you two aren't in the same room. And obviously, like, not all the bugs are like models, but for the ones that are, like, it's fantastic. I have a soft spot for that kind of thing. But of course, that leads into the quite possibly one of the best scenes of this film when they have to hold out in the fort. It is a fantastic scene. It's basically they get a distress call and then they realise, uh-oh, it's a trap. And they have to, hold out until their escape arrives. And oh, it is just fantastic. Lots of people die, don't get me wrong. Like, I would not want to be like part of that battle, but
Oh God.
oh, it is brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is brutal. But like as you say, like it is like a very like tense and like you really do get the sense of being like this like desperate like stand trying to like hold out for as long as possible till they get rescued. And it is really well done.
Most of them get out. I'm saying that laughing because I know the teacher ends up getting his legs like chopped off by like a monster or like a bug under the sand. Yeah, Dizzy gets stabbed through the chest and we get the very heroic and dramatic, oh, Rico, I always loved that's it.
At least I had you.
Yeah, it's like that'll do, Dizzy. That'll do. Yeah, you were literally just introduced into this as a love interest, weren't you? I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say she's entirely, I don't want to say useless, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, she's not just there as eye candy for the most part, although there are like one or two scenes like that where, yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, Dizzy takes her top off in this scene, you're like, 90s sci-fi, why?
It doesn't help that literally it's like, so the night before like the Roughnecks go to this fort, Rico and Dizzy like have sex, and it's literally like, all right, well, you've had sex now with the main character. Well, I guess that's your arc pretty much done then. I guess we can kill you off now. It doesn't help that that's kind of the end result. It's like next day and Dizzy dies.
Yeah, but what's worse, that or being serenaded by Gary Busey on his future violin.
How they're still in a romantic mood after that, I don't know. Because that would put me off straight up. I've been enough to like pour cold water on any emotion.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, whew, my God.
Got you more in the mood?
I know. It's like, I mean, I wasn't really in the mood before, but that green violin, I mean, my God. That's just...
that shock top of hair.
Yeah. He honestly does. He looks like... Do you remember that scene in Home Alone where I think it's Marv gets like electrocuted and he's got like the Bart Simpson hair after?
Yeah.
Is what would happen if Bart Simpson joined the mobile infantry. He indeed had a cow and a lot of bugs to deal with, but that's beside the point. Before we go into the ending, like, one of the weird scenes is when they have like a funeral for Dizzy and then they just shoot her out into space. And that is something common in sci-fi, because they did this in the Wrath of Khan, like, for example, in Star Trek, where you get the teary scene of Captain Kirk saying, like, of all the people I met, he was the most human. And I was joking about I was joking to you about this, like, of all the women I met, she was the most acting worthy of them all, compared to Carmen, who's just like, oh, Rico, help me. You're like, oh, no. Oh, Denise, what are you doing? Ms. Richards, please. Nah, jokes aside. After that point, I feel as if the film just kind of barrels towards the ending. Like, it's not a clean ending. If you know, like, what did you feel about the ending?
Yeah, like, it kind of does feel like they're, like, trying to grasp onto something to be, like, a big point. It's like, oh, right, okay, the brain bug. So there's, like, this... when they go to the outpost, they find out that this bug has been like sucking the brains out of people to gain knowledge. So they're like, "All right, okay, this is the enemy. We need to go find this brain bug." And that's Neil Patrick Harris, who steps his way in to put Rico in charge of the Roughnecks and sends them back onto the planet to capture this bug. And it does just, and then at the same time, like Carmen's ship happens to get like shot down and she gets captured by the brain bug. So it does just kind of feel like they were like, right, we need something to like resolve all these and bring everybody back together again. And they kind of settled on this brain bug. So yeah, it does feel a bit like, oh, okay. Right, we're going with this.
Do you remember what the planet was called?
Planet P. How could I forget?
Which I wouldn't mind as much, except the fact that Neil Patrick Harris literally turns round with a straight face and says, "We're going back to P." And I'm like, I'm an adult, but... That tickled my funny bone. I was like, how can you say that with a straight... Who wrote that in the script and said, "We're going back to P," as if it's like this drama? I honestly, I think that was on purpose. Do you know?
I can't believe it's not.
And then at the end, there's a weird scene where it's like the Roughnecks are going to, like all of them, all of the mobile infantry are mobilised and they're trying to find the brain bug. But there's like one scene where Johnny like stops and he turns around and he's like, oh, Carmen must be alive, and somehow he knows that she's there. And then it's revealed later that Neil Patrick Harris gave him like psychic coordinates to find her.
Oh.
But then he turns around and he's like, oh, that was you speaking to me. And I was kind of like, what? Like, I feel as if the sound design guy kind of passed out after the Clondatu drop and was just like, yeah, no, I didn't edit in Neil Patrick Harris like talking to him or even a whisper or anything saying, you know, Rico left. You know, like, there was nothing like that. And you're just to assume, oh yeah, turns out he was in his head all along, and you're like, okay, fair enough. It's like, fair dues. Yeah, it feels as if they kind of rushed through it, and it's like, oh no, we've got to save Carmen. Yep, we get Carmen out, now we've, you know, captured the brain bug, it's afraid, woo! Join the mobile infantry, and then that's it, it kind of ends. I think, again, like, don't get me wrong, I do like the end where they show one last newsreel, and again, it's like this propaganda of, you know, like the mobile infantry and the fleet, like, mobilising and shooting out and showing this kind of display of strength, you know, saying things like, we need soldiers like you, and then you get the iconic line of, come on, you apes, you want to live forever? Which, unfortunately, a bit like what happened with Star Wars, where, you know, lines like, oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah.
And things like that, it kind of gets bastardized, where everybody says it at some point, or, well, like, that kind of happens in the later films, because the reason Rico says it is because his teacher said it to him, and they've got the guns there, and he goes, come on, you apes, you want to live forever? Which is how the book actually starts. And also, fun fact about that, it turns out there are, like, see the teacher in this film. Apparently, he was like two separate characters in the book. So the teacher was a guy called Mr. Dubois, and who is like really well regarded as this like war hero and everything, and oh, he's amazing. So it's like a cross between him and Rajchek. I hope I'm saying that right, if not, apologies. But the guy in the film, you know, he's like a separate sergeant, but for some reason they just like mashed the two characters together. Again, why? I'm not 100% sure, but it's the same, really, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, let's just mash them together and hope for the best.
It's a little bit of a parody of, I don't know if you've heard of the film or the book called All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, yeah.
The World War One, which is basically about like these German youths who get like swept up in like the war fever of the First World War, and they go off to like fight, and basically most of them die. Well, I think actually, you know, it's like their disillusionment, and like their teacher is such an important character at the beginning who like it does the exact same thing basically as Czech does, and this one is like, you know, imbues them with this like sense of patriotism, and you need to fight, you know, like to be like a man, and to be like a, you know, like a in the case of like a German citizen, you know, you need to fight and, you know, do your bit for the fatherland. So it's kind of a play on that in a way, like, and I guess for brevity and maybe for like simplicity for the audience, they just thought like rolling that character into like the two characters together. I think it works. Like I think for this film it kind of works like in a way, and it probably was a better idea just to like combine those two characters into one. It kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely, because I don't know if they would have had time. But the same with like Sergeant Zim as well. You know, like the kind of subtleties I think are lost from the book. Well, at least the beginning, or rather the first half of the book, definitely, compared to the first half of the film, there is like a lot of small things that are lost. I can kind of understand why they were taken out, you know, for the sake of like getting the plot going, but then it almost feels as if at the very end it just ends, you know, like he knew he had to have like this big bombastic ending, but at the same time it's just like, oh yeah, we found the brain bug. And it's not even Johnny who finds the brain bug, it's like Zim, who actually, I honestly never remembered this, because I remember watching this when I was younger and forgetting who Sergeant Zim was. So when he turned up at the end, I was like, who's that? Why are they celebrating this random guy? And yeah, it turns out because he does ask to be sent away to like Clondatu to fight the bugs, and his superior officer says, no, unless you like go back down to the role of private, you're not allowed to rejoin. And of course that leads into him becoming, you know, a private again, just to serve his like, you know, the Federation and this kind of sense of duty and everything. And again, it's like really interesting ideas like that I feel as if, especially at the time when this film came out, like this film definitely, as you said, was panned by a lot of people, that it was just like this silly film that was, promoting fascism as this great thing. And it really doesn't, does it?
No. I think what I find so fascinating about the end of this film is like the utter lack of character development you would almost expect in this film. So Rico starts off as very starry-eyed and like naive, and it's like, oh yes, I'm gonna join the mobile infantry and like earn my way as a man and like a citizen and stuff. And you almost expect the film, especially as the film was a satire, you almost expect the film to be like his journey to like peering behind the curtain, and seeing like the hypocrisy and seeing the fact that the generation of this society and that, it's so militarized, it's just sending these young people just to die for like no real reason for the benefit of others. But that doesn't happen at all. Like he's just as like starry-eyed and like blindly loyal to the Federation at the end. In fact, he's more of that than he is actually at the beginning, where the fact is, as you say, he joined because because he was in love with this girl, he joined up. But then like almost his love transfers from Carmen transfers into a love of the Federation and everything. And what this film actually plays like, you could actually believe that this film was a propaganda film for this universe. So like, like the Federation made this as a propaganda film to like, almost like something like the films used to get during like the Second World War and stuff at the time, where it's like very kind of simple characters and it's like a tale of good versus evil, and it's meant to like inspire, it's meant to inspire the population to support the war effort and everything and show that we're on the side of right here. It almost feels like Starship Troopers could be a film for that universe, and that's how it kind of it's bookended by two of these, like, as you said, two propaganda sections. Basically, it is like, for the glory of the Federation and everything. And I just find that so fascinating that there's none of that peering behind the curtain and seeing like the hypocrisy and the real like evil that's clearly at the heart of the Federation at all. It's just like, no, like it's all for the mobile infantry and for the Federation and, humankind. I find that fascinating.
There's even a line, like, see at Dizzy's funeral where Neil Patrick Harris comes up to him. It's something it's a scene that really doesn't sit right with me. Because again, it kind of goes into this idea of, right, we've only got a couple more minutes, let's wrap up the film. But it's when Neil basically like berates him, saying because the like intelligence service knew there was a brain bug down there, but they didn't bother warning the mobile infantry. And this is like his friend, like his high school friend, and he didn't warn him that he was potentially like going to his death. And Rico's only reaction to this is it's basically something along the lines of, he says, didn't you hear the mobile infantry's best for that or something?
That's what we do, yeah.
That's what we do best, yeah. And it's like, it's just such a wooden response. You think, is this what he feels? Is this, what is going on here? It's just as bizarre. It just seems like a strange choice for the script. Like, I wouldn't even put this in like Casper Van Dien or any of the other actors in the scene. It seems like a weird response for the character to have against, like a childhood friend. It's like me finding out, like, you sent me like to a bug-filled planet where they've got like chess playing, I don't know, ants or something, and then you're just like, well, wake up, this is what we do. And you think, what the hell, Adam? I mean, it's my job, but what the hell? But there's none of that. There's no outrage, or it just seems like robots. Like, okay, that is my duty, and maybe that's the point. Maybe you could like extend that and say, oh, that's the point of it. That he's so indoctrinated that he thinks, oh, okay, even though
this is my role.
Yeah, and despite my, attachments to this person as a childhood friend, as you said, my attachment to the Federation is even larger than like friendships or any acquaintances. Maybe that's what he was going for, but on the surface level, just seems a bit weird. I mean, would you say?
Yeah, no, I think it is, like, again, and maybe I'm giving Verhoeven too much credit here, but I think it is exactly that thing, as you said, of an indoctrination thing. I think it's this like satire of like of showing, like, how war dehumanizes people, and like, they lose a sense of it's just like all that's left is like the mission and the unit and everything, and what you're fighting for and everything. I think it is that way of showing how indoctrinated the youth of this world have become through, like, but the fact that their whole life seems to be revolved around like prioritization of military service and showing that might is right and violence is the way to solve problems, and it's even that way as well, like they get really no reward. I mean, okay, Rico gets promoted, but there's really no reward for all the stuff he does. Like the reward that he gets is the chance to participate in another battle. Like, so he goes through one like harrowing, like, like close run battle, and then your reward is to get thrown into another, like, life or death situation. And again, that almost seems like critique of like what war is. At the end of the day, like, there is no reward. Really, at the end of the day, the reward is that you live another day to like put your life on the line again. So I'm tempted to say that I would lean towards, I think that's the point Verhoeven is making here, just because I think it kind of fits in with the criticism and like satirism of this film. Again, I may be too much credit, but that's the way I'd be tempted to lean towards.
The one thing I would point out is the rolling promotions that Rico gets in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Like, literally, someone, I think it's a sergeant or something, I think it's a staff sergeant, gets killed by like a flying bug, and his commander's just like, oh yeah, by the way, you're staff sergeant now. And then later on it's like, oh yeah, that other person died, you're head of the Roughnecks. Oh, you're head of the... it's like, all I'm saying is, in civilised society, if that's the way it worked, there would be a lot less people coming into work. To be like, do we have to kill our boss to become like... to climb up the ladder, like that's the way it seems to keep going, that one person dies and they like falls feet first. And again, like as you said, I don't know if that's like a reflection of like the duty that because he's sticking with it and everything. But that's the thing though, you're right, he doesn't get many rewards other than being like this, again, hero of the Federation, which is another thing we'll come on to in another episode. But one thing I do want to, like, kind of as a closing point, one thing I do want to bring up, and this is the final time I'll say it, but a comparison between the book and the film. In the book, when Rico goes to join, basically his family warns him, and says, don't do it. It's really not worth it. And of course, he's absolutely smitten with Carmen, and him and Neil Patrick Harris's character, Carl, that's it. Carl and Rico go to the station, or the recruitment place, and they're basically told, like, by a very weary guy, listen, if you're serious about this, then go for it. We will find like any position for you. You could be a dish cleaner on the Roger Young, the flagship, or you could be, like, he doesn't reference it directly, but you know what I mean, like he comes up with all these menial jobs that you could actually do in the Federation. But at the same time, in the book there is a 48-hour cooling off period, which I find quite interesting, because that, to me personally, I don't know about you, but if this was supposed to be like a fascist society where they're saying, oh, you have to, join and it's going to be great, like, I really didn't get, unless I've read it wrong, but I did not get that impression from, the instructor in the book, like not the instructor, but the recruiter, who is like, listen, there's 48 hours, you can go away, talk to your family, say your goodbyes, and decide whether or not you still want to join up. And of course, because of that, like in the next chapter, Rico says to his parents, and his parents basically don't talk to him, or rather his dad doesn't talk to him, and just like completely blanks him. And that shows like the severity of it. It shows that these actions are having consequences, and even the military is saying, listen, we don't want you unless you're 100% sure. As long as you're not under the influence of anything, feel free, fill your boots. But in the film, it comes across as like an angsty teen drama, where it's like his dad saying, if you join the mobile infantry, you are cut off, young man. And he goes over, and as we've discussed, he comes across this comical guy with no legs who's like, oh, the mobile infantry made me the man I am today. And then that's it, it's like played for jokes. So I get Paul Verhoeven was trying to go for that satire of fascism, but I feel as if in some points, like, I think the way he does it fits with the tone of the film, but kind of as an adaptation, it doesn't really mesh well with what the book, because I know obviously he said he hated it, but this is literally like in the first couple of chapters, so it's quite surprising to see that he didn't really take kind of nuances like that on board. And again, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just reading that upside down. As a kind of final point though, what are your closing thoughts of the film?
It's an interesting film because I first watched this film probably, I think I was in my mid-teens, quite remember how old I was. Sometime around then I watched this film and I honestly hated it. I thought it was terrible. I thought it, like, the acting is wooden, it's just dumb, there's nothing going on, and I really hated it. What a waste. And it wasn't until like I started to know you, and I think we started talking about it, and I heard that you really liked it, and I thought, really, like that film was terrible. And then, like, I saw a little bit more about it, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe there's actually a lot more going on in this film than I actually realized at the time. And then watching it again, I don't love this film,
Hmm.
but I think it's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think it's a really, really, it's both a really loud and dumb film,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's a really clever satire, I think. And
Hmm.
I would actually think I think it makes a really good comparison to another one of Verhoeven's films, that Showgirls, which is like a film about this woman who like moves to Las Vegas and basically becomes a stripper, and then kind of like finds herself in like the kind of like the high end Las Vegas entertainment sector, and there's like the comparison is basically like her lifestyle is no different. It's still just like crass sexual objectivism,
Hmm.
like and everything. And that film again is a kind of satire, but the difference is I really dislike Showgirls like strongly. I
Hmm.
really do not like it, and I actually really like this film. And they're both satires, but I think this works as a satire in a way that I don't think Showgirls does.
Hmm.
Because as much as Showgirls is satirizing the sexual objectification of women and everything in society, it still spends most of the film sexually objectifying
Hmm.
it's like the female characters. So I think it just doesn't work.
Hmm.
But this one I think really does, and I think it's a fascinating critique of like as I said, like the military industrial complex, like jingoistic, like a foreign policy, a culture that like puts so much emphasis on like violence as
Hmm.
being like the answer to problems, and the fact might is right. And I just think it's such a fascinating work, and I think it's one that you really should watch more than once, because I certainly didn't get it at all when
Hmm.
I first watched it. And I think things like the wooden act, because the acting is so wooden for all the characters, that they're all one dimensional, and there's
Yeah.
really no growth, but it works for this film because of what this film is about. It's about showing like the dehumanization of people, and people so indoctrinated that this all they believe is this one thing, and they don't have like personalities and stuff. It's all about the glorification of like whatever it is, the Federation in this case. So yeah, it's an art film that I love, and I wouldn't probably rate it as one of my favorites. I probably prefer some of Verhoeven's other work, like RoboCop or Total Recall,
Hmm.
but I still think this is a really, really good film, and I think it's really worth watching. Because honestly, a lot of the stuff this film is talking about is still relevant, and maybe you could argue even more relevant today.
I mean, that's what I was reading up on, that because of a lot of, like a lot of world events that came after this film, like the War on
Yeah,
Terror, and, let's face it, you could pick any name of a unjustified war out of a hat, and,
yeah,
you can make comparisons to this film, where it's just like a bunch of young men and women going, throwing them out there, and just, as you said, and as the film says, going into the meat grinder of
yeah,
just really warfare. And I think that's why it's so popular now. It's definitely a retrospective film. It's not a film
yeah.
that, again, as you said, like, I remember the first time I watched it and really not enjoying it. And I have to admit, one of my reasons was trivial, because I remember seeing the scene where remember they had the lasers for the like training exercise. So they're
Oh yeah,
like shooting each other with these laser guns, and it was like, oh cool, laser guns. And later on they just had like normal boring guns. So you're like, oh man, like it was like, oh, what is this film? Oh, it's about bugs. And I thought it was an okay film, and I don't know, there's just certain aspects of it that I really like, or rather I think that are really well done, whether especially the action, the effects. From a technical standpoint, this film's fantastic, personally. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying like, oh, it's Oscar worthy, oh, it deserves to be like one of the top 10 satires of all time, because I wouldn't go that far. But at the same time, it brings up a lot of interesting questions. And I think one of the reasons that it's caught so much controversy is because it's like stemming from the book of the same name, which has completely different, well, not completely different themes, but completely different like objectives and settings and things like that. And it's just a shame. It is kind of anchored to the book, because if it was his own thing, I think maybe then it would have like taken its own identity, rather
Yeah.
than kind of having the book as like a shackle, to be like, oh, Starship Troopers is good, but what about the book? And you're like, yeah. I mean, it is a good film. I really enjoy
Oh
it.
yeah.
Like, I enjoy it more now because I know people like who really hate this film because they've read the book first, and it is definitely a Marmite film. It's either you love this film, or maybe I wouldn't go that far, but either you like it enough, or you just absolutely hate it and
Yeah,
can't stand
I
it.
agree.
It's definitely one, as you said, it's definitely one you have to go back and kind of watch it and things. And I wouldn't say the satire's like deep. I mean, as we saw, you've literally got Neil Patrick Harris in a SS uniform. Like, as soon as he walks in, you're like, ah, okay, this is the film we're watching. But at the same time, it's a fun romp. If you watch it as an action film, it's great. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. If you're watching it as an adaptation of the book, probably not as good. It still loses a couple of those essential things from the book. I think the thing that makes it shine more than anything is the fact that compared to its subsequent sequels, which fortunately didn't get a theatrical release, it's head and shoulders above anything that came after it.
Oh god, yeah.
And it is weird because I think the last film for this series was in like 2017, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, where it was like, so what they've started doing now is they've started doing CGI films. So they've already brought out two, and Casper Van Dien still does Rico, which I thought was pretty neat. He still does the voice for
Yeah,
it.
it's nice.
Yeah, it's quite nice. He's got a role. He could just be like, "Do you want to voice Johnny Rico?" Do I? So that's kind of cool. I do like that. The only film he actually isn't in is the second one, which again, the sequels are going to be ones that we will talk about in a future Satsunami episode because yeah, we could rip them apart for ages. But at the end of the day, Starship Troopers is the head and shoulders above all of these films. The second and third one, fourth and fifth, they genuinely don't hold a candle to the first one. I've heard a lot of people say the fourth one was as good as this, if not better. Spoilers for the next review, but I disagree. Would you say that?
If you view it maybe as just a pure action film, maybe fair. Like, but the first one is so much more than an action film as well. Like as we said, there's so much other stuff going on that just if it was happening in the fourth film, I completely missed it. So no, they're not. Like I don't want to say people are wrong. People who say that are wrong.
So what you're saying is like this film is not just like a pretty face then?
No, it yeah, exactly. It's a pretty face, but it's also got a brain.
Yes. Yeah, that's the perfect summary. Starship Troopers, it's not just a pretty face. Now there's some like 1950s propaganda for you. And speaking of propaganda, no, I'm not kidding. Thank you, Adam, for joining on this episode. It's always a pleasure talking about Starship Troopers.
No, thank you. Well, thank you first of all for having me on the episode, and thank you as well for getting me to rewatch this and actually helping me to appreciate this film in a way that I don't think I would have ever probably watched it again if I hadn't met you. So thank you on both counts.
You're more than welcome. And I apologise for getting you to watch the sequels. That's one thing I'll apologise for.
You've got some apologies to do for that.
I'll apologise in the next episode, okay? I'm so sorry. For that. Honestly, like, my kind of closing remark would be if you felt lukewarm about this film, like, when you first saw it, go back and watch it. As long as you're into, like, action sci-fi films and you don't mind a bit of gore and maybe some minor frontal nudity. Boy, I'm really selling this film, aren't I? You know, like, genuinely, if you're kind of not put off by that, give it another watch. I'm not promising that it's going to be like the satire of the century, because it really isn't, but it's not as bad, I think, as a lot of people criticise it to be, especially when it came out. Like, I think it's unfairly criticised, especially compared to some of the rubbish that came out after it, which we will, as I said, we will get to those. Yeah. Give it a watch, as the Rolex salesman said. Give it a watch. Right. So, hey, on that note, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. You can check out more Satsunami episodes on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube as well, and indeed all good podcast distributors, so please feel free to check us out there. If you want to check out more of our gaming content, you can check out our Let's Play series called T-Posing over on YouTube at Satsunami42, where we play like a host of games like Heavy Rain, GTA, Warzone, Breath of the Wild, you know, a whole selection, isn't it? It's like an Argos catalogue of games.
A smorgasbord.
A smorgasbord. I was going to say it and I thought, oh, I better not, but thank you.
Oh, I'll never pass on the opportunity to say that word. I love it.
Oh, smorgasbord. Yeah, that's such a good word, isn't it? That's the challenge after you listen to this podcast episode. Try and find a way to put in the word smorgasbord into a sentence when you're talking to someone. And yeah, if you want to check out more of my content personally, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and of course Twitch under the name Satsunami42. And without any further ado, stay safe, stay awesome, most importantly stay hydrated, and yes, would you like to know more? Bye guys.
Bye bye.